The Netherlands has long been an innovative, competitive and prosperous economy. It's currently the fifth largest economy in the EU, with one of the highest GDP per capita in the entire world. In recent years, while much of Europe has struggled with stagnant growth, falling real wages and rising debt, the Dutch economy stood out with the strongest post-pandemic rebound in the EU, enjoying solid real wage growth and a falling debt burden. But according to the latest available data, the economy is now suffering somewhat of a slowdown, as a tight labour market, emissions rules, and a strained electricity grid have all produced serious supply-side pressures for businesses. So in this video, we're going to have a look at why the Dutch economy was doing great, and why it's now starting to look a little shaky. If you love staying informed and want some of the best reporting on YouTube, then subscribe and ring the bell for more. Let's start with some context. In the last few years, the Dutch economy has seemingly been doing really well. It's recorded relatively strong GDP growth, in stark contrast to the rest of the EU. In fact, when compared to pre-pandemic levels, Dutch GDP has grown by slightly over 5%, a fair bit above the Eurozone average of about 3%, and way better than larger European economies like France and Germany, which have seen growth of about 2 and 0.5% respectively. Meanwhile, its GDP per capita has consistently remained well above the EU average, where the Netherlands ranks fourth. The main driver of this growth has been its strong output of exports, largely in business services, agriculture and chemical and pharmaceutical products. The country runs a massive current account surplus worth about 10% of GDP, and in 2024 was the fourth biggest exporter in the world. On top of that, the Dutch state, long known for its fiscal prudence, remains in an exceptionally strong position. It ran 4 consecutive budget surpluses before the pandemic, and although deficits rose during pandemic support measures, spending quickly returned to pre-pandemic levels. By 2022, the budget was essentially balanced, and in 2023, the deficit was just 1% of GDP. That year, the debt-to-GDP ratio fell to a post-2008 low of around 47%, one of the lowest in Europe, below even frugal countries like Germany and Austria, and far below nations such as France, which struggles with deficits above 5% of GDP and debt in excess of 100%. However, economic indicators for 2025 and the next few years paint a slightly different picture. Growth is expected to slow significantly, with GDP projected to increase by just 1.1% in 2025 and remain around 1% over the following 2 years. Now, whilst these numbers aren't bad per se, it does suggest that the economy is losing steam. A major factor behind the slowdown is apparently the Netherlands' extreme spatial pressure. With more than 18 million people living in a territory 1/10 the size of Germany, the Netherlands is the second most densely populated country in the EU, at around 520 people per square kilometre. Nearly 60% of the land is already built up, farmed or lies below sea level, and strict EU environmental protections limit how much more can be developed. Despite this squeeze, half of all land is agricultural, some of the most intensely farmed in the world. But this has created some serious environmental challenges, most notably excessive nitrogen emission. For context, the Netherlands ranks among the worst in the EU for nitrogen pollution per hectare, about 4 times the European average. Government plans to cut emissions, mainly by reducing livestock numbers and buying out farms, have not only threatened the Netherlands' long-standing global position as a leading agricultural exporter, it's also sparked widespread anger in rural areas. In 2023, this backlash boosted the pro-farmer BBB party, which briefly joined a coalition with far-right Dutch politician Geert Wilders before the government collapsed. The nitrogen crisis isn't only affecting the agricultural industry. Its pressure on the environment has made it extremely difficult to issue construction permits, which has effectively stalled construction across the country, meaning infrastructure projects, like building new houses or roads, have stopped. This has only exacerbated the country's housing crisis, caused by land scarcity, underinvestment, and high demand. The second factor dragging down growth is the Netherlands' extremely tight labour market. The unemployment rate stood at just 4% in September, well below the euro area average of 6.3%. While this looks impressive on paper and is undoubtedly positive for workers who enjoy strong bargaining power and faster wage growth than the Eurozone average, it poses real challenges for businesses. With so few people unavailable to fill vacancies, roughly 2/3 of Dutch firms report labour shortages. This limits their ability to expand, has reduced productivity, and created widespread supply bottlenecks, problems that are far more acute in the Netherlands than in many of its peer economies. Again, this is in part a consequence of the Netherlands' lack of space. After all, it's hard to bring workers in when you don't have much space and housing is already exorbitantly expensive. The final major issue slowing growth is the country's increasingly strained electricity grid. The Dutch power network was originally designed decades ago around a handful of large gas-fired plants, but is now overwhelmed by the rapid shift to renewables. Electricity is flowing into the system from millions of rooftop solar panels and dispersed wind farms, especially in rural areas where the grid is weakest. As a result, smaller local lines are overloaded, creating widespread grid congestion that prevents many businesses from getting the connections they need. According to Tennet, the government-owned agency that runs the Netherlands' national grid, 8,000 companies are currently waiting to be able to feed in electricity, while 12,000 others are waiting for permission to use more power, which has delayed investment and weakened the country's competitiveness. So, all in all, a tight labour market, high nitrogen emissions, and limited electricity grid capacity have created serious supply-side constraints, hampering growth and investment. Several homegrown giants like Unilever, Relx, Shell, and Prosus have already relocated their headquarters abroad, while other large companies are considering the same. For example, dredging company Boskalis is reportedly weighing relocation due to growing regulatory burdens, physical constraints, and difficulties attracting highly skilled foreign workers amid tightening immigration rules. This has severely weakened the Netherlands' competitiveness, at the same time as the country continues to underspend on research and development relative to its peers. According to the World Competitiveness Ranking, the Netherlands dropped from 4th place in 2021 to 10th in 2025, and during that same period, its economic performance fell from 2nd to 19th place. The political situation hasn't really helped either. Frequent government changes, including the election and collapse of a far-right government in May, have created political uncertainty, spooking investors, and delaying action on issues like labour shortages and housing. Following last month's election, coalition talks led by the centrist D66 party are underway, and the Dutch should hope this new government, whatever shape it takes, will finally address the various issues plaguing the Dutch economy. When a story like this breaks, the headlines aren't just fast, they're fragmented. Depending on where you get your news, you might be seeing a completely different version of the same event. But if we take a look right now using Ground News, we can see that there are 172 sources currently reporting on this story about the Netherlands taking over the Chinese chipmaker Nexperia, with most of the coverage coming from the centre. If we dive a bit deeper, we can see that the left is framing Dutch intervention as a measured regulatory response to governance shortcomings, and the right is framing it as a bold seizure against Chinese-owned threats. We're able to get such a detailed analysis thanks to our sponsor this week, Ground News. If you're overwhelmed by the amount of outlets and stories that you're seeing online, Ground News has the solution for you, as they expertly collect and merge thousands of articles into one easy-to-access place, finally giving you an effortless way to consume news and digest media bias. And it doesn't even end there. Ground News offers you comprehensive breakdowns into the ownership, bias distribution, and factuality of each article, allowing you to dive even deeper into every story. For example, if you're worried about how much you can trust what's being said about a certain event, with a click of a button, you can filter and sort every story by their factuality level, helping you to easily grasp the reliability of each outlet. It's not just the stories we see that shape the narrative, it's the ones we don't. Ground News' blind spot feed is the only feature that shows stories being ignored by one side of the political spectrum, helping you break out of your bubble and spot what you might have missed. To give you an idea, here we can see this story on the former Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Kasyanov to its extremists and terrorists list, which would have been completely buried if you lean right, as it's mostly being reported by left-leaning outlets. Ground News doesn't just feed you stories based on your algorithm, it allows you to see everything the other side might not want you to. That's why we're partnering with them to offer you 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. All you have to do is subscribe through the link in the description, go to ground.news/TLTR, or scan the QR code on screen, and you'll be supporting an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.